right. Well, hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to today's webinar titled Doing Business in India. And we have an all-star panel with us today. Joining us from the Foreign Commercial Service India office, Raghavan Srinivasan and Naveen Rai, as well as a dear friend and fellow District Export Council member, Clint Lazenby, who is the founder and CEO of Traverse Group, who spends half his year in India working with business partners. My name is Jonathan Bricker, and I'm the chair of the Arkansas District Export Council. In my primary role, I work for Regions Bank, located in Bentonville, Arkansas. My banking career started off as international business development, and now I'm a commercial lender with a focus on helping commercial and industrial businesses located in Arkansas. I want to begin today by thanking our sponsors, the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions. Without their support year-round, we would not be able to host these webinars free of charge and bring this education to the group. So thank you so much to the AEDC and AMS. I really appreciate you all joining today. For those of you that aren't quite sure who the DEC is and what we do, allow me to do just a quick introduction. We're a private, nonprofit organization that brings together experienced international business people with potential exporters. Each DEC member has been appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce for their real-world expertise in international trade. We have a ton of experience within our council in many different sectors. Now, having said that, doesn't mean we have all the answers, but we can introduce you to someone who does. We are a community of connections within the exporting world, and basically we want to be your strategic partner to help you grow your exports, which helps grow your bottom line. My hope for the day is that you'll walk away from this webinar with more confidence in your exporting abilities. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar that you don't feel comfortable asking here, I invite you to reach out to us on our website, exportarkansas.org, and we'll have one of our members reach out to you. And there you can also sign up for our monthly newsletter, which is chock full of pertinent international news and trade show opportunities. In fact, this past one, while we were advertising for this webinar, one of my dear friends up here in Northwest Arkansas was traveling to India, saw our speakers listed and where they're located, and asked to do an introduction. So it was kind of neat that that we were able to bring people together in person through our newsletter. So chalk up a win for the Arkansas guys. Before we begin, I want to ask everyone that that isn't speaking to please keep yourself muted and either raise your hand if you want to ask a question or put it in the chat, and we'll make sure to get to that. We just want to kind of cut down the amount of background noise that may be interrupting to our speakers. So I appreciate everyone's help with that. I'd like to introduce everyone to your moderator today, Mr. Rudy Ortiz. Rudy is the owner of Strategic Business Services, where he helps companies in a wide variety of international business and exporting needs. Rudy works alongside companies entering new markets and is a U.S. partner of Global Market Entry Consultants, which is a group of entry experts that are located in 32 countries. He has an MBA in international business, and he facilitates export and supply chain classes for the RDEC and is also a certified global business professional. For these reasons, he is the DEC's education chair. Rudy, I appreciate all your hard work on this and getting everything set up. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
I appreciate that, Jonathan. Thank you so much. You know, India is a really interesting market, I think, for Americans. It's, I think, very different than a lot of other markets. And so having commercial service officers who are in India and are from India to be presenting, I think it's going to be extremely valuable. In addition to that, Clint O'Neill is shortly going to come on. He's, as Jonathan said, a DEC member, a very valuable DEC member to us. and he's done a lot of business in India. And so having a perspective of an American doing business in India, we thought would be valuable. So, like I said, I think it's going to be a great webinar with a lot of information, getting information, in terms of, questions that you ought to be asking yourself and asking, whatever partners that you're looking at and distributors and whatever it is, and getting the information that you need to be able to make good, solid decisions that will allow you to be successful and have significantly less problems than you would otherwise. And I think with that, Clint, I think I'm going to go ahead and go to you and allow you to talk about what your experience has been so far.
Sure, I appreciate that. Thanks for the introduction. It's good to meet everybody today. I've been working in India in different capacities since 2002, so I do have quite a few reps there, and hopefully, what I'll share with you will be beneficial. I'm approaching it as a first time doing business in India, and really just wanted to share what were the things I wish I knew the first time I landed on the ground there. On a tactical basis, interestingly, if you fly into Delhi or Mumbai or any big airport, Uber will work for you to get to a hotel or whatever. That's relatively new, and that's a good thing to know. So you don't have to be sort of freaked out about how to get to the hotel the first night and that sort of thing. Number two, India uses an e-visa. I would highly recommend that for your first trip. It's fast, it's easy, it's quick, and you can move a lot faster than trying to get a multi-entry.
Which one?
Okay,
Red ball.
I
excuse
think
me.
he likes it.
Someone is talking and is not muted. Would you please mute your mics?
Um, if you've done business in India or in China for a number of years, I would use a framework of pre-1990 China as a framework to approach India and what you might expect from a business and business infrastructure perspective. Um, uh, you will find that in India, there's a lot of really good companies that offer really good services, but it's fractured in terms of services. You may have to work with providers in different cities rather than being consolidated for the nation, even when it comes to marketing. Number two, if you're doing assembly in the country, you would find that there's not a lot of interoperability today, meaning that you won't be able to get a wiring harness that's ready to go to be plugged in. Those are industries that have yet to develop. So, where it's a little bit more, I would say, plug and play in China, that hasn't evolved yet in India. They're working hard to fill those gaps with the industrial infrastructure, but just expect that you're going to have to do a little bit more work. Um, the next point I just want to make is India is a very hard place to understand, both culturally and from a business perspective. So don't be overwhelmed by it. Don't think that you're not getting it. It will come with some time. Just approach it very openly. And so, what do I mean by that? What I would mean is that, um, in particular, you'll get a lot of questions from business partners that you're working with that typically you would not be faced with, and it may feel a little bit invasive, or yeah, invasive is a good word. And so your reaction may be to sort of take a pause. Just recognize that that is their business culture. They're trying to learn. They're trying to understand, as a general statement, very inquisitive, smart people, and so that's how they're building their understanding. You're as foreign of an idea to many of them as they are to you, and so just be open to that and just roll with it. The counterpoint to that is, don't take things for granted. Um, uh, they're going to be expecting that you're looking out for your best interest, and that you're asking the questions to ensure that you're comfortable. But they're not going to be offended by that. And so, just if you're thinking about something and you're not understanding it, just literally ask them a question and delve into it. They're generally happy to share and want you to understand what is going on. But they're oftentimes not going to volunteer it. They may just assume that you know. So just be assertive in your own questioning. Lastly, I guess I wanted to touch on a couple of cultural questions or points that have come up for me in the past. The number one thing that I would say is that um, uh, Indians are incredible hosts, and just expect that you're going to eat a lot of meals there, and they're going to want you to experience what is going on. That is for no other reason than just being a tremendous host and wanting to share their country with you. And so, I personally have never been sick in all the factories that I've been in. I've never had a situation where I got sick from that. And they're looking out for you. And I would, I would encourage you to try that. Um, and the last point I want to make is in a lot of other countries, when we're doing business, we would want to set up an entity on the ground. We want to explore that. In India, that is something that you want to wait until the absolute last possible moment to consider for two reasons. Number one, they are impossible to shut down. The number I heard recently was that the average time for a court resolution is 37 years. And so things will take a long time. So make those decisions very deliberate and wait until you really need that for the business, very specifically, because there is also a large administrative burden in managing an entity in India. A lot of corporate records and votes, and it requires you to have some senior management in place. So just think long and hard about that. In closing, I hope that is an encouraging set of facts and gives you some comfort to do business there. I enjoy it. It's as Jonathan said, I spend on average 8 to 10 weeks a year in India, and I completely enjoy it. I have a great time with it, and it's a great place to do business. A very dynamic market, and I wish you the best. And as a member of the DEC, I'm here to help answer questions. If there's anything I can do, I'm more than happy to help and get you off to a good start. With that, I really appreciate it.
Okay. Clint, thank you so much. We really appreciate your insights. You know, the Indian people are lovely people, and as Clint said, really smart and just a pleasure to work with. But it is a very different culture than the American culture. And you know, the probably the best thing I can say about doing business internationally, and including India, is that assume that it is different than what you normally see in terms of the United States. If you start with the assumption that things are done differently, in this case in India, you are probably 99% correct. So make sure that you ask your questions and don't think there's are any silly questions. And with that, we will go to Raj. And Raj, he is with the commercial service and he leads the commercial section at the U.S. Consulate there in Hyderabad and Kolkata. I guess it's Kolkata. And he represents American businesses' interest there in 14 states. You guys probably know that India is a very large country, very large country with a very diverse population, languages, cultures, and so it is not like some monolith where you go to a country and everybody has the same culture, the same language. It's extremely diverse place, and Raj comes with a tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise in doing business in India. And Raj, with that, if you'll take it over, I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Hey, thanks. Thanks, Rudy. Heidi, can I get the next slide, please? So just
Great.
briefly, I lead. Yeah, I'll wait for the next slide. But in the meantime, yeah, I lead the commercial service in central India. There's some 30 odd states in India, and so it's a big country, as I think most of you know. But it's intimidatingly large. So the part that I cover, and the Hyderabad consulate covers central India. The three states that come out of the Hyderabad consulate are Orissa, Telangana, and Andhra Pradesh. Telangana is probably one of the most thriving of the business states. It's a very business friendly state. Most of the probably has the fastest growing GCC population. For those of you who are unfamiliar with GCCs, these are the outsourcing arms of American companies. So it has almost every big American company you can think of has a presence in Hyderabad and in Telangana. Telangana is the state where Hyderabad is in and where the consulate is. And one of the very cool things about Hyderabad again is also that it's got a lot of links with the United States. Since about half of all the students from India who go to the United States come from this region, the Telugu-speaking states of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. So almost everyone here, especially among the business community, has either studied in the U.S. or has a family member who's studying there or lives there. Huge Telugu-speaking communities in colleges like Purdue, in almost every in every college across California, in Washington State, in Texas. Dallas, Texas is a huge hub of the Telugu community. So it's a very cool place, and I've been in India as a commercial officer for the last 4 years now. For those of you who are not very familiar with how it works, we typically do 3 to 5 year rotations. So I'm coming on 4 years in India. I did a stint in Delhi before this, and I will be, and it's been about 3 years in Hyderabad, and I will be in Hyderabad for another year. Okay. So can we just get to the next slide, please? Great. So just a couple of quick bullet points that I will run through. In terms of the economic snapshot, things are looking really good in India at this point. Some of you you've probably heard about the China Plus One strategy that a lot of American companies used. And at this point, I think there is a lot of optimism that the news, some of you might have read the news, that all the iPhones that are going to be sold in the United States in 2026 will be made in India starting next year. And so every iPhone. So this, I think Apple had a plan of X number of phones that they're going to make in India for 26. Since in the last few months, because of the tariff turmoil, they've actually decided to make all the iPhones here, and so that's going to be a 2x of their original projections. This is actually creating a lot of that and so many other businesses, especially in the electronic sector, who have made the decision to move their production to India. It's created a lot of excitement among Indian businesses as well as American businesses that actually do manufacturing here. Everyone's ramping up. Everyone's very optimistic. There's actually Foxconn. Some of the Apple contractors have operations in Telangana. There's the state where I live in. They make the Apple AirPods here, and in a conversation I had with some of the Apple contractors, they're like, there is no other country for them to expand in. They're looking at India as they're all in on India for their expansion. This is so it's a pretty remarkable change that's taken place in the last few months. Very, very positive feeling about the economic trajectory of India among both U.S. and Indian businesses, and the trade that will probably ensue as the trade negotiations unfold. And so here's we will talk about. So can we move to the next slide, please? So here, a couple of quick facts, and I won't bore you with them because I imagine most of you know this already. Largest population right now overtook China, 28 states, 8 union territories. I'm not going to, try to tell you what the big differences are between union territories and 28 states, but it's essentially, so you've got altogether about 36 independent units, and each one has the population of a small country, or even a large country, actually. I mean, when I think about it, the population of Tamil Nadu, for example, just one of the smaller states, not one of the not so big states in India, is actually the population of Germany. The population of Uttar Pradesh is upwards of 200 million. So on its own, it would be one of the largest countries. It's just one of many states in India. So the per capita income about between $2,000 and $3,000, which is not adjusted for purchasing power. Once you adjust for purchasing power, it jumps up quite remarkably, and it's actually becomes the third largest economy in the world once you adjust for purchasing power. Without adjustment, I think it's the fifth. So things are really cheap. I mean, if you, for those of you who've taken Econ 101 and understand how the purchasing power parity works, things are really, really cheap here. And I agree. Whether you're taking an Uber, you take an Uber from one end of the city to the other, and it's not going to cost you more than, like, I don't know, $10. And you could stay in, you could have a 4-course meal for just I don't know, $2 in a really nice restaurant. Things are super cheap. I mean, there are challenges, but I'm having lived here now for 3 years, almost 4 years. I've enjoyed the cost of living. It's really quite remarkable. One of the point I'd like to make is that the India gaining the STA Tier 1 status. What it really means is that India is now permitted to buy, and U.S. companies are permitted to export a lot of dual-use technologies, and the defense ties are booming, absolutely. We see a lot of companies come here in the defense sector, trying whether they're working through directly, trying to sell directly to the Indian government, or working through partners. A lot of interest in the defense sector, partly as a result of the 2018 evolution in Tier 1 status for India. Give me next slide, please. Okay. I went through some of this already. The growth rate has been in the 7 to 8% ballpark. There was some talk of it slowing to 6%, but I don't think it's it doesn't look like it's going to get much below that. And possibly once the reallocation of resources from China, or the China plus one strategy unfolds, I think that there's reasonable optimism that the growth rate could bump back up again. It is one of the really cool things about India, and I'm going to look at the last bullet point here, the UPI, the Unified Payments Interface. It's India is virtually a cashless, has a cashless system. It's got a technology that allows for payments to be made without even the use of Bluetooth, you can use very simple flip phones to make payments using UPI. So it's kind of like the Apple Pay, but for Apple Pay to be used, you need a much fancier backend system. The UPI is super easy to use, and it's also open source. So there's no one company that controls it. And this is something that India is very proud of, and rightly so. It's allowed for a large section of the population to get access to financial services and banking, and reduced the degree of cash that people have to carry on, theft, and on all the ensuing problems that come with carrying cash, as well as tax compliance because of that. And this is something that India is trying to export to the rest of the world, and showcase as being evidence of India's lead in payments technology. Next slide, please. A couple of things that I will let my colleague Naveen talk about some of these things towards the end, but there have been a lot of really interesting policy changes that have taken place in the last few years. One that you'll hear a lot about is the first one, the production-linked incentive, which actually gives companies subsidies to increase their manufacturing. Whether or not they actually end up selling it, as long as you produce it, you get a subsidy. So they have so companies have a huge, very sizable, for the size of the economy, incentive to set up manufacturing and make things. Couple of other things that I would like to point out. There have been reforms in labor and bankruptcy law. A lot of these were big encumbrances for companies, 10, 20 years ago. I spent my early childhood in India in the 80s, before my family left when I was 5, and it was nearly impossible for a company to go, easily wind themselves up, to fire anybody who they hire. A lot of these things have become very, very, very much easier in the last few years, but I'll let Naveen talk about that in more detail because he's the policy expert. And until the World Bank wrapped up their doing business report a few years ago for various reasons, India was steadily climbing the ease of doing business rankings. Every year it would climb up consistently. And I would guess that if the policy were the report were to come out this year, it would have made substantial improvements still, based on reforms over the last few years. Next, please. So here are some of the strategic sectors that we have identified in the commercial service, aerospace and defense, and I spoke to you about defense earlier. Aerospace as well, because India is actually, and this is a sector that I lead for all of India, and so I know a little bit about this, and I'm happy to answer questions. India is building like a new airport every week, and they are seeing an enormous. And then one of the challenges in India is, of course, the roads network is not great, and because of that, it actually makes more sense to where in the states where you might drive from, say, New York to Boston, or and that's not very easily drivable. That's not a kind of distance that people want to do on the road in India. It's so much easier to fly, and so there's been a huge interest in flying. The Indian aviation industry has been liberalized. The main airline, Air India, has been privatized. There's been a boom in private sector interest in airlines, in airports. Airports have been privatized as well. India put in some of the largest orders for Boeing planes last year. Air India did. It was actually the largest order for jets, period. They put half about 220 Boeing planes and maybe 200 odd Airbus planes. It was one of the largest orders in aviation history, and this is something that I think is going to continue going forward, given the boom in aviation in India. Indians are getting excited about traveling. A lot of countries, off the top of my head, I can think of Thailand, for example, or Vietnam, who have liberalized visa regulations, visa rules for Indians, so that it's become a lot easier for Indians to travel overseas without getting visas. And there's been a lot of interest in overseas travel and domestic travel. So aerospace and defense, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, because of Indo-US defense ties. This is one sector that's been doing really well. The other is education. Of course, India has overtaken China just in the last 1 year as being the country with the most number of students in the United States. 350,000 off the top of my head. And as I was mentioning earlier, at least half of them are actually from Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, the states that my consulate represents. Huge interest in education. There is, I think you might have seen some news reports about other countries where people are losing or at least getting discouraged from seeking American visas, student visas, or going to the US. That's not the case in India. There is a huge positive view of the US and the US education. People view this as being huge assets. And interest is is almost limitless. In almost any one of our consulates, if you step outside and you look at the lines, as I do every day at my consulate, there's a huge line of Indians looking for student visas, primarily student visas, to go to the U.S. Energies is another big one. Of course,
Raj, this is
yes.
Rudy. My apologies for breaking in. One of the things that I want to point out in terms of the education is that the percentage of Indians that have higher education is significantly higher than it is in the United States. For instance, only about 6% of Americans have master's level degrees, and that's it's like 25, 30%, I think, of Indians at some point try to get their master's degree. So for that industry, the education industry, a big opportunity, and also in terms of hiring people, also a big opportunity.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I forgot that we had this slide, the A&D slide, which gives you a little breakout of the sector. I think thing that I would point out in the FDI bullet and which is that the 74% FDI in defense manufacturing, which is I think this happened last year. Naveen can please step in if I'm mistaken. But this is to encourage companies to set up facilities in India and make things in India for the Indian market. And so there are no automatic route, as in there are very few approvals required for that. Next slide, please. India, by the way, defense budget, I think until recently, they were the largest importer of defense in the world. So, they a huge budget, and they made almost very little of it themselves. So the Indians were the largest importers of defense, and most of their products was coming from Russia until recently. And now it's kind of flipped. Russia, even though there's still a large legacy purchase, because you have to maintain those old fleets of Russian transport jets and whatnots, but new platforms are increasingly Western, including, last year you might have seen a $4 billion deal for the MQ-9, the Predator jets. There is ongoing negotiations for the P-8, Boeing P-8 transport reconnaissance aircraft, as well as the C-130s from Lockheed Martin. All of these are ongoing. There's a lot of interest for American defense products. The thing that I will highlight, and this is something that we've seen a lot of American companies come here to do, EdTech. And India has been a pioneer in EdTech for many years. Especially during the COVID years, there's a huge uptick in Indian parents subscribing to EdTech products, and American companies have done really well in that. And just today we in the consulate, we helped an American EdTech company sell their products to American Indian parents who are looking to have their kids write better college entrance applications, for instance. So there's a lot of growth in EdTech for American companies, and we see that a lot. Next slide, please. One thing I will mention, of course, the masters in India. It's a little bit different. It's and we see that in the quality of the universities is not consistent. There are some amazing universities like the Indian Institutes of Technology. They are their entrance standards, their research papers, they're on par with anything that you'd see coming out of an MIT or a Stanford. In fact, there's been some essays I've read about how it's almost harder to get into an IIT than an MIT. But there are also plenty of universities that will pretty much just print out a certificate for just showing up. And our consulate folks, and I don't work in, of course, I hear this from the guys who are work in the visa section. Some of these, so having a master's or even a PhD sometimes can be quite misleading. And that's a challenge for my consular colleagues who are trying to figure out legit students going from here to the US. India has been making a huge push for renewable energy. I think that's one thing that I would they're I believe that solar power because India has, of course, everyone knows that it's a fairly sunny place, that there are parts of India that are hot. Rajasthan, the desert, huge parts of India are just desert, and so it's actually by some measures, solar energy is actually, it's cheaper to build out solar energy than it is to build anything from fossil fuels. But that said, India still consumes a lot of fossil fuels. It produces very little of its own, except for coal. And one of the things that, of course, American companies I think they have seen opportunities in LNG, especially as India tries to at least cut down on its imports from some of its more traditional sources. I think that that India used to import a lot of fossil fuels from Russia, but I think they're trying to switch out of that and move to other sources. This has been a fairly recent news story, so I won't comment too much on that. But their energy has been something that we're trying to identify as being a potential export opportunity for American companies. Next slide. This is something that we have kind of we think this would be particularly clean drinking water. And yes, I don't get clean water out of my taps. A lot of people invariably buy bottled water to drink. And safe and clean drinking water is a challenge in many parts of India. And this is something that I again see a lot of American companies take advantage and work in. Next slide. Yeah, healthcare and life sciences is huge. India is, of course, one of the largest exporters of pharma generics to the US. I think more than 50% of the generics that we get in the US comes from India. But India is also, because of the huge pharma industry, a lot of kit for the pharma industry comes from the US. For example, companies like Corning operate in India. They supply many of the pharma companies here, and we also see the presence of a lot of American pharma companies who sell more advanced drugs that are not generics. And this is, again, in India, is, of course, it's not the margins are not huge. Indian drugs are really, really cheap. And invariably, you don't even need a prescription for them. It's a very strange system. I can just call up my pharmacist and get just about any drug I want with no prescription, and just pennies. You pay, not even like a dollar for, let's say, 60 aspirin tablets or something. But there's a lot of innovation that's taking place here in terms of making the drugs more cheaply, and India has actually been one of the pioneers in vaccine technologies. And during COVID, and this is something that India takes a lot of pride in, supplied large parts of the third world with COVID vaccines. So yes, supplying to these pharma companies is a huge business for American companies as well. Next slide. ICT, information communications technology. Yes, again, all the big players are here. Microsoft and the Googles and Amazons. If I look out my window, I can see all their buildings just right out from where I live, and many of them have research and engineering divisions here. But also India is also increasingly becoming not just a producer of talent and a back office for these ICT companies, but it's also a consumer of ICT. Of course, as I might have mentioned earlier, India is going to be, everyone expects India to become the largest cell phone market at some point, given this, just given the size of its population. And Apple's, of course, made huge investments in India for that reason. And unlike places like China, for instance, there are, Google, for example, there are very few websites that are blocked. There's no big firewall accessing information. So this is something that so Facebook and Google and all these and WhatsApp, these are all easily and readily accessible in India. So it makes it a very attractive market for a lot of American ICT companies. Next slide. Mining and critical minerals. That Orissa, there's a state that's actually comes under my consular jurisdiction. It has at least 40 or 50% of all the critical minerals in India. A lot, it has a huge lithium and rare earth elements in Orissa, and it's something has been under tapped, if you will. India really hasn't invested a lot in getting these out of the ground, but given the recent interest in rare earths and critical minerals, there are a lot of American companies that come. I went to an Orissa investment summit a month ago, and there were companies from all over the world in Orissa, the eastern parts of India. Orissa is just one of many states that has it, but it's maybe the epicenter, that have an interest in mining these critical minerals from India, because it's really under tapped compared to China or Australia or almost anywhere else. Next slide. Travel and tourism, of course, as I was mentioning earlier, in the context of aerospace, Indians are learning to travel, and they're loving it. There are some surveys that suggest that Indians would like to go to the US more than any other country if they had all the resources. But of course, it's expensive. So getting a visa is hard for many Indians. It unfortunately takes anywhere between a year and sometimes even 2 years for a lot of Indians to get visas first time travel to the United States. So that's it. There's some huge bottlenecks. But the expectation is that these bottlenecks will ease. My consulate, for example, just built out 54 windows. We don't have people to staff all these 54 windows for visas, but the hope is that as supply comes on stream and visas become more readily available, there will be many more Indians who are clamoring to go to the U.S. And there are also a lot of flights that are being that are planned. Direct flights between India and the US. Right now, for example, you can fly direct from Delhi to New York or Bombay to New York, but there are other hubs that are in the works, including and what I know sitting in Hyderabad, places like Dallas and LA, which are huge epicenters of the especially the Telugu population. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go into this because I think there are probably challenges in every country, and I think that there are, in some ways, the challenges that are here are probably true in every developing country I've worked in. Weak IPR, intellectual property rights enforcement. The regulations are often opaque. The taxes are, some of the rules are not very clear. The government is a little bit slapdash about how they enforce rules for U.S. companies versus Indian companies. There's some of that, but I think there's a lot of work that's ongoing in terms of bringing tariffs down. There's a lot of work that's going on in terms of bringing down non-tariff barriers as well. And I think I'm not going to comment on this because these are ongoing, but I think stay tuned. I think there's going to be a lot of positive news coming out about U.S.-India tariffs and non-tariff barriers being eased for American businesses.
Raj, I think that I'd like to try to go ahead and give Naveen maybe a couple of minutes to make whatever comments he might have, some suggestions or whatever, and then move on to the Q&A.
Sure. Okay. Absolutely. Naveen, you want to step in?
Over.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the background. I hope I'm audible. So, just to give a perspective on doing business in India, of course, a lot has been said already, and sector-specific details have been provided with by my colleague. But to give a perspective that where India stands right now, as we know that India is growing at a faster pace. However, there are certain challenges, regulatory barriers are there, which is mentioned in the slides as well, or challenge and opportunities which American companies face when they operate in India. Given the growing demand in India, government of India has also comes up with policy which favors more to the domestic companies. So that is bound to happen whenever there is a developing economy and they want to manufacture more. So the intent and idea is always to promote as US commercial services to export into India. But however, there are certain challenges. We work with the companies in while the government policies impact American companies to export as well. Of course, it changes from sector to sector. In some sectors, the policies are very lenient, very good, where you can actually get engaged with the government authorities, get it resolved, export to India very easily. However, where there are few sectors where there are a lot of challenges where companies face when they enter the Indian market. So it's always advised to basically the companies who are exporting to India to look after three, four big parameters. And the first and foremost is understand the ecosystem and the policies which government of India has in terms of export. Second, more importantly, find the right partner once you enter the Indian market. That's a key important because the partner can resolve most of the issues for you. Third, understand the regulations and the paperwork and documentation very thoroughly in order to uh, export to India, because even one mistake can actually lead to impacting the export of your company. And fourth and foremost is there are certain bottlenecks, delays, which always happen, regulatory delays in the country, which impacts exporting into India. So keeping that in mind, we are very, very particular about the fact that, please be very mindful of all the documentation and understanding the regulatory process. So that's in a nutshell. These are four parameters we always say that the company should take in mind once they are exporting into India. And more importantly, have patience. India is an in-person market. We have always told companies that India is an in-person market. You need a lot of patience. Initially, also one of the our featured speaker mentioned that you need a lot of patience here. Things doesn't work. People like to meet here and work with you while doing business in the country. So virtual, of course, at times work, but most of the time it doesn't in India. The trust factor comes with more meetings, more engagements with the right partners in the country, and that's how you take forward your product if you want to export to India. But that said, in a nutshell, I will just say that we at Commercial Services are here to help American companies export, and if they face any bottlenecks and challenges, we are here to support them as well. So, of course, you will have all our credentials as well. So, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer on that front.
Naveen,
Thank you.
thank you so much for those comments. A comment was made a little bit earlier about the Indians asking certain what we might see as personal questions, and Naveen kind of addressed it a second ago, and that is the trust issue in many cultures. Because of perhaps their judicial system is different than the United States, uh, they really focus on developing a relationship with you, one that is a trusting relationship, because obviously it's if something goes south and one of the partners does not comply, legal issues can get very expensive and time consuming, and so it's much better to know who you're working with, so to speak, whether they're trustworthy or not. And the only way that can happen is by having meetings with them. They're asking you about your family. They're asking you what sports you like. They're asking you, things that in the United States we would not normally cover, right? People asking you about your family. But that's the reason that you might get asked personal questions, is they're trying to get to know you as a person and develop a relationship and feel you out, whether you're somebody who they can trust and do business with. Having said that, that takes longer, right? Developing trust and developing a relationship takes longer. And so, the chances that you're going to go to India with one trip and that you're going to come back with a contract is significantly less than if you went to Wisconsin. So, be patient. It takes time. You're probably gonna have to make multiple efforts before you come back with a contract. So, be aware of those things. And so I think I'd like to go ahead and open it up for any questions that our viewers may have. Ms. Heidi, do we have any questions at this point?
No, I don't see any in the chat.
Okay. Well, if somebody has
Oh,
a question,
actually,
one. I do see one. Can you elaborate on the requirements for having an entity in India?
I'm sorry, would you say that again, Ms. Heidi?
Can you elaborate on the requirements for having an entity in India?
So,
Naveen?
yeah, thank you. So opening an entity in India is a pretty straight guidelines which has already been laid out by the authorities. The main entity where we generally a company, if somebody wants to open an entity in the country, is the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So that's where you first need to register. Along with that, you have to create certain parameters, look at certain parameters that you need to have an Indian director in order to open a company. Of course, having the stakes, but you need to have Indian employees in order to maintain the representation. And more importantly, what you need is an RBI approval as well. It totally depending on the kind of business you are getting in. You needed you need basically a RBI approval as well. So there are certain entities where you need approval, you need directors. There are certain GST tax related formalities that you need to complete. That's a standard procedure, which is, I would say that it's a 7 to 8 steps uh,
Process.
process that you need to fulfill, and accordingly you can open an entity in the country.
Very good. Once again, the best advice I can give you when you go do business in any other country and perhaps India as well, is to do not make the assumption that because it's done in the United States in X way, that's the way it's going to work in another country. That is rarely the case. Make the assumption that it is different, which means that you need to be asking questions and getting all the facts. So it's just super super important. Any other question that you have? You see there? Go ahead.
yes, Rudy. There's one that says my company already has a supply chain business in India. Can you suggest resources so we can improve our regulation knowledge with the new policies?
That sounds like another Naveen question.
Yes. So thank you for that question. And more importantly, since I don't know that in which sector your supply chain business is, but I will suggest that whatever sector it is, what's more important is that you need to know the ministries which are involved in, what are the schemes which are already there. And so you need to follow the ministry websites. You need to work with your Indian partner to track those resources with the ministry, respective ministry in which you are operating. And more importantly, if you want to have a consultant or if you have a query, you have resources like our office, US Commercial Services, who can help you assist with those. And more importantly, there are other partners in the country who and consultants who can help you track those regulations as well. So it totally depends on the kind of business you are, and based on that, and you'll need to track those respective ministries uh, and take it forward from there. Because it's an ever-changing evolution in India. There are regulations coming every month. There are a few cases that I've seen regulations are coming up, or new policies are being drafted. So one needs to be very much aware about all the changes happening. And if you want to track the ministry, that will solve most of the problem.
Sure. That this individual is in the manufacturing machine sector.
Yeah, so definitely for this curtail, basically manufacturing machinery is heavy machinery. So MHI is the Ministry of Industry is the one which you need to track and see that what all is happening, what all new policies are made, what new schemes are being made, and accordingly you can track all the updates which are happening within the industry as well. And we have resources as well, like US India Country Commercial Guide, where you'll find all the policies and regulations as well. We can share the link separately with you to go through the report and have a look at it as well.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions here for you guys. How long does it take to get registered and assigned a GST number?
So this I'll answer again. It totally depends. Generally, the process takes from 1 to 3 weeks, not more than that. However, you need to be present in person when you are assigned a GST number. You have to provide all the documentation. It totally depends. There are waiting times at times for a month, but generally, it's not more than 3 weeks for registering a GST number.
Yeah, Naveen, a little clarity there. So if you've already hired somebody to represent your company in India, can that person be the one that gets the GST?
Yes, yes. So there are two kind of GST. The GST numbers are given on the business entity, right, rather than an individual. So once the company is registered, or maybe your partner whom you are working with, a distributor who you're working with, so that number, that GST number will be utilized for all the transactions and for the taxes purpose as well.
Perfect. One of the things that I want to add, just in terms of, things that you need to be kind of aware of is, and I think it was Raj that talked about it, and that is, the legal system in many, many countries it takes a real long time. And so, once again, you make sure that you cross your T's and dot your I's, as we say here, because if you ever have to go to court, it could take a really long time. And so just kind of be aware that try to do everything by the book, step by step, making sure that you don't miss any steps because it could get very difficult and costly.
Perfect. All right. I think we have time for two more real quick, and I think this one is definitely a good one. Is the U.S. commercial service in India expected to receive similar resource cuts as we are seeing in the U.S.? If so, what other resources are available to assist U.S. companies?
So I think, Raj, I would like you to answer this.
I can take that.
I know it's kind of a tricky question. I know.
It is. I think I will keep to my swim lanes here, but I will say very briefly, so I don't get into too much trouble. But yeah, we have the initial budget that's been put forward has anticipated 30% cut to ITA, the International Trade Administration, which is where the Foreign Commercial Service falls under. 30% cut. There are discussions underway to close consulates, and reduce our numbers in these consulates. I think I would say, this is having your we like to make sure that we get our wins. Make sure that the American public recognizes our wins. So that's one of the reasons why we make sure we are always engaged with the business community. That said, I mean, there are plenty of American consultancies that do work in India as well. If this is something that we are not resourced to support, we can absolutely connect you with not Indian consultancies that advise on market entry. And we do have like a business service provider list. I think we can, Naveen, maybe you can share the link. So these are Indian companies that we've had that we're not endorsing necessarily, but we know them, and they pay us a small fee to list on our website, and these are legit. We've met them. We've worked with them before. Yeah. So yeah, I think there are alternatives for sure. We'd still love to help your businesses, and we still have the capacity as of now. But if if it comes to it, there are alternatives for sure, and we're happy to advise you on those.
Yeah, and be aware that that I also have partners in India that are that's what they do. They do market entry, and so they assist all sorts of companies to navigate the Indian culture and systems and all of that.
And the last one, because I think this is probably one of the most important things to touch on. Clint, I think you worded it perfectly here in the chat, but Clint was asked to provide one or two anecdotes from his experience to India. And I think, Clint, you kind of speaking to that quickly would be just the cherry on top of this entire webinar, speaking about your travel experience.
I think you're muted right now.
Yeah, I just first thank you for the feedback, and I would just say that.
We can only see your head, Clint.
Actually,
sorry, my camera's jacked up.
there we go.
I just I have just found that everyone goes out of their way to make sure that I'm safe, that I feel comfortable. They take an opportunity to share some just amazing things that are important to them about their local community. And Rudy, you talked about trust very early in the conversation, and that really gives you an opportunity to create some just common bonds and understand what's important, just as we would really in our own way here, in our own countries. And I've just found taking that minute and taking that opportunity to just really help fortify those relationships and put you in a great position for the future.
Perfect.
All right.
Unless we have any more questions, I think that we will end it there.
Yep.
Miss Heidi, would you go ahead and throw up the slide that has all the contact information of everyone? Okay.
Yeah, if everyone would please be sure to take a screenshot of this information, because this is a team that could be instrumental in helping you export to India, or or even probably import from India as well. Educated, boots on the ground, very giving and professional team right here. So definitely please take a screenshot of that. Again, I want to thank our sponsors, because without them, this would not have been possible, with the sponsorship of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and Arkansas Manufacturing Solutions. Thank you both for all of your support. Ms. Heidi will be sending out an email tomorrow, I believe, with a link to the recording on the YouTube channel as well. And I just invite you to reach out to us if we can help you with anything big or small along the ways.
And if we could go ahead and do the survey as well, that's the only way that we know whether we're being effective or not, by having your feedback. So if you would answer that, would really appreciate it.
All right, Rudy, that's all I have.
I think that's it. And if you guys will go ahead and fill out the survey, be aware that in about a month or so, we're going to have another webinar, and we'll update you on that information.
Okay. Thank you all for everyone's time today.
Thank you very much.
I'll leave it up for a few minutes so that everyone.
Thank you, Heidi. Raj and Naveen, thank you again.
Thank you, guys. And yeah, well, until next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.